why would people want to listen to us in the first place?
Right. So why?
I don't know. I mean, we're kind of fun.
I mean, here's the thing, is that just because we enjoy hanging out with each other, it doesn't mean anybody else would or does.
I would guarantee that.
Yeah. So that's one thing I was thinking about. Is like, okay, well, we're funny. Are we? We're knowledgeable. Are we? Maybe, because that was the only answer I could come up with. I think ours could be a podcast where people listen to it and they want to be in the room with us while we're talking. Whatever we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
So we can talk about whatever we want to talk about. We just have to be likable enough that people want to sit in the same room.
Ugh, slippery slope.
Yeah, right?
Not sure they want to get into that. I'm pretty sure they want to get into that because they would definitely want to listen to us.
But I guess sometimes you don't have to necessarily be likable for somebody to want to sit in the same room with you. So why do people listen to podcasts?
I don't know. I think for a lot of reasons. To escape.
Yeah, okay.
The people I've talked to that listen to podcasts a lot are usually listening to podcasts while they're doing something else. Maybe they're running or they're folding laundry.
Right.
Or taking a train and just wanting something to block out the noise with. So it's not always a super active process, the listening experience, but they listen to it and they do get sucked into the story, but it's also accompanied by another activity, which I think is really interesting because I don't think there's a lot of other media out there like that outside of music.
Right. I don't know. Maybe people want to listen to us because we just have fun talking to each other, you know?
I think so.
That's why when you said we should do a podcast, it's like, okay, I have fun talking to you. I assume you have fun talking to me. I mean, I can't speak for you. I'm not in your head, but, you put up with me enough to I assume that, So if we have fun talking to each other, maybe people would have fun listening to us. So what happens if nobody listens to us? Do we take that as I guess we're not very fun to...
I mean, does it matter?
I don't think it matters. I don't think see, this is the thing. I didn't agree to do this expecting people to ever listen to us. It just sounded like some fun sort of project,
I think that's a good, safe playing field because this isn't necessarily us trying to pretend like our opinions and thoughts are so important that the whole world needs to hear it.
Right.
It's more just like we enjoy having thoughts and talking about them.
We could call it that. We enjoy having thoughts.
Oh, man. This is going to be terrible. Cheers.
I mean, it could be. It could be so bad that people listen to it because they're like, oh, I got to listen to that train wreck. You know what I mean? But I don't really think we're train wrecks. That's the thing. It was like, we're not so annoying that it would be a train wreck. We're not so educated that we will be informing people. We're not so funny that people will put it on to laugh their heads off. But I think we're likable.
Sure.
At
least we have to keep telling ourselves that.
Yeah. Maybe we can call it, hey, listen to us, we're likable. I think people will listen to this because I'm friends with you. No, because you're Rob Hanna. You're an epic human being, You're half Asian, half Irish, so you've had that experience growing up in a half racist country, America, and then moved to a former racist country, Germany. And now you've been living in Germany for 5 years and have had that experience. You've also played in countless punk bands through the years and have toured the States and America almost 100 times collectively, I'm sure. Put out many, many albums. You used to do a zine and a record label of both the same name, Aborted Society. So you put out a lot of zines that people have read, and you put out a lot of music people have listened to. And I think you have lived an interesting life and have world experience that I think makes for an interesting story.
That's a glowing review, and I'll take it. Thank you very much.
Cool. I was thinking about it earlier. What would I say about Rob?
And likewise for you, kind of had your beginnings in the Northwest. You're one of the few people that's actually a Seattle native, which is like a unicorn for people that actually live in Seattle.
That's true.
You really made your first waves playing in bands, most notably Blood Clots, which you've led and were in for, what, 6 years?
Yeah, I think 6 years, yeah.
Later in World Funeral.
Well, for 6 months.
For 6 months. I watched you, in the beginnings of your college education, getting your Bachelor of Fine Arts at UW. And at the time you were studying sculpture, and you had made the most insane sculptures I've ever seen a human do. And you got onto this path, like getting into and really being obsessed with visual art led you into the world of tattooing. You became a world-renowned tattoo artist in a very short amount of time, traveled the world countless times over, making a name for yourself, winning a shitload of awards, really specializing in, realistic black and gray work. And you really made a name for yourself. It's been kind of amazing watching your trajectory as well as a creative artist.
Thank you.
Relocated to Berlin just before I did, maybe 6 months, a year before I did. Before that, you were the co-owner of Apocalypse Tattoo, which later you became a co-owner of Studio Arcanum.
Yeah.
After more or less.
It's a weird sort of apocalypse, sort of Arcanum, sort of not, sort of, yeah.
Relocated to Berlin. Spent the next 5-6 years traveling more than anyone I've ever seen in my entire life. You were in a different country every 3 weeks for 5 solid years, which is really, really impressive. You went all over the world and really left your mark everywhere you went. Everyone in the world knows you.
Thanks. I don't know what to say. But cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Also, we've been very closely aligned for the last 25 years. You met me when I was 18 years old and had just moved to Seattle from Colorado.
Right.
We lived in 3 different houses together. We went on tour a couple times, traveled Europe, early 2000s. We've really had kind of a long timeline of being involved in each other's lives.
So that's another thing of like why people would listen to this, because you and I have known each other so long and have shared many interesting stories together, but our lives have also kind of ran a sort of similar thing. We've kind of both stayed with one foot in the punk scene, but we've also become successful in other avenues, and we've always tried to stay informed about politics and art and science and all of that. And yeah, I think people like to listen to a couple old friends talking because it makes them feel like they have an old friend that they're talking to. You know what I mean?
For sure. I was going to say that was one thing that I always found unique about my friendship with you is like you were one of the only people I knew who was as deeply invested into punk and subculture and radical politics as you were about pursuing your goals and your dreams. A lot of people in subculture don't allow themselves that space. I feel like they feel like their life has to be dedicated to punk and that's it.
Right.
And it stops there.
Right.
But you were one of the only people I knew that was like pursuing a degree, and you were, reading a lot of books and studying, and, you had like another level to your existence that wasn't just belonging to a subculture.
Right. And the funny thing is I felt the exact same thing about you. It was almost like a contest. Like, oh, Rob's doing cool shit. I got to do cool shit too. Oh, Rob. Oh, fuck, he's doing. Okay, well, I got to do that too. I don't want to be boring like everybody else. So it was cool having you as a friend, and it wasn't like a toxic competitiveness. It was almost like inspirational. It's like, okay, cool. I'm glad I'm friends with this guy because watching him do shit kicks my ass to do shit, you know? Not like I wanted to be better than you. I wanted to I was inspired by you, you know?
Yeah, it's like a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, exactly. It was a cool fucking thing. Yeah.
So, how did we meet?
Well, I was walking down the street with a big group of punks. Half of them are dead now.
It's true. That is.
But that was
really
25 years ago. It was the punk scene. We all live very fast adrenaline lives, and that's just how it is. And I walked by you. You had I think it was a mohawk or spiky hair of some sort, and a studded denim jacket on, I think, studded vest. So you looked like you belonged with us, but I didn't know you. And I thought to myself, I know everybody in this town that looks like that. Who is this? You're on a payphone calling somebody. But I almost thought you were on the payphone with nobody on the other line. You were just hanging out on the street with the payphone on your ear, just kind of checking out what was going on, you know? And it just kind of rolled through my head of like, I bet he's not even on the phone with anybody. I'm going to fuck with this guy, and he needs to hang out with us. So I said, hey, who are you? Said, oh, I'm Rob. Oh, okay, cool. Well, we're going to go drink. You want to come with us? And he said, yeah, okay. And you hung up the phone, and I was like, I got you. There is nobody on the other line. Although you probably really were talking to somebody, but whoever you were talking to was probably not nearly as interesting as seeing this like flood of punks walking down the sidewalk. Well, I have to know where these guys are going. This is interesting as fuck. So whoever's on the other line, sorry, this is only costing me $0.25 to get rid of you, you know?
That's funny because I remember it a little differently. Like I was next to a payphone, but I think I was sitting down against the wall.
Okay.
Because at the time, this was the late 90s, about 97 in Seattle, and I was on Broadway.
97, yeah.
And Broadway, you know, when I first moved there, I didn't know anybody. It was kind of almost an accident that I ended up there. So I just heard that like punks like to hang out on Broadway. So I would...
Right.
You know, on weekends, I had nothing to do. I didn't know anybody. So I would just like sit on Broadway and just like hang out. And unfortunately, in the first few like weeks that I lived there, I met a lot of junkies because that's what junkies did. I was like, okay, cool. A lot of all the punks in Seattle are on heroin. That's cool, I guess. I don't really want to do heroin, but you know, whatever.
Right. So you were kind of waiting for something to happen that is exactly what happened.
Exactly.
You were kind of waiting for us to come pick you up.
Yeah, it's true.
And we did.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And
how often does that happen? I'm just going to sit here and wait for exactly what I want to happen. Done. Cool.
Well, that was kind of the magic part about that era, you know, before all of us had, you know, before even a lot of us even had cell phones.
Right.
If you wanted to go meet up with people, you just went somewhere where you knew people were going to be. And that was how your social networking worked.
Well, you weren't 21 either. You couldn't go You couldn't go to a bar and just hang out and meet people. How the fuck do you meet somebody in a brand new town if you're not even 21? You know, you find out where the punks are. What street do the punks hang out and panhandle, you know?
Yeah.
Or just show off how punk they look, you know? And then we went around to the side street to a house. You guys were with the backyard of a house. So we were with Jello, and he had some friends with the backyard. They were throwing a party in the backyard of a house. I don't even think they knew who owned the house. We just all kind of congregated in the backyard of this house. I feel like there was some fire spinning going on.
There was a fire performance.
Just randomly. And then one of the friends, I almost think it was Squints, had sex with a girl on a dirty mattress right there. And we were all kind of laughing about it. And that's just how the scene was back then. It was just kind of like you never ever knew what was going to happen. And that's what I really miss about those days. Is you never knew what was going to happen. You know, now I feel like you go to a concert or hang out with people in the park even, and you know, you're going to have a few drinks, have a chat, have a few laughs, and at the end of the night say your goodbyes, and that's it.
From the connections I made meeting you, and also uh, I met the future drummer of my first band, Phalanx. Well, not my first band, but one of my first bands in Seattle.
Nick.
Yeah, Nick Rogerson. I met him going to shows at the Velvet Elvis. And so he and I became really good friends. And I met like two different sides of the Seattle punk scene around the same time. And every single time I went out and met with people, I would meet like 3 or 4 other people.
Right.
And I was kind of an antisocial person in Colorado. Like I was really much of a loner. I only had a couple close friends. And so moving to Seattle, I kind of had to learn how to become a social person. So I went from being like nihilist and weird and, outsider person to like becoming a social person.
Right.
And it was so cool because I'd never been surrounded by so many people that had similar interests that were more or less on the same wavelength. And that was like moving to Seattle was like the best thing I possibly could have done at that time. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't end up there.
Yeah, it's a strange thing to think about, It's a strange thing to think about how our lives would have been different if I would have just kept walking when I noticed you on the street.
Yeah, maybe I would have just ended up dying of a heroin overdose at 19 or something.
And me as well, Who the fuck knows? Do you know Kyle auditioned for the lead in Home Alone?
I do.
And it came down to him and Macaulay Culkin, but his face slap in the mirror was not as good as Macaulay Culkin's. So sometimes I used to look at him and be like, I could be hanging out with Macaulay Culkin right now, and Kyle Palmer would have been the person that was famous. You know what I mean? It could have been a total role reversal, And how would life have been if my best friend was Macaulay Culkin?
That's a really weird parallel universe.
It is. Yeah.
Life's kind of full of that stuff, though. Like these seemingly chance encounters. When I met you on the street in Broadway, there's no way in hell I would have had any idea that we would be living in Berlin 25 years later.
Right?
I mean, I had some preconceived notions of like moving to Germany back then, because when I moved to college, my sister Julie was like a Fulbright scholar and lived in Cologne for about a year and a half while I was in high school. And the first year I was in school. So I kind of learned about like this mystical world of Germany back then, and was sort of entertaining the idea of like graduating. I was studying German in college, and then I was going to like move and try to move here right after school. But I ended up, getting sucked in and totally enamored with my life in Seattle, and everything was really great. So by the time I graduated from school, I was already in bands that were touring, and I was, had relationships, and I was having a great time, and I didn't really see a reason to leave.
Right. Same thing with me, Once I graduated from college, I did the typical backpack across Europe thing and thought, oh shit, I should move to Germany or Holland. Holland was actually my first choice. Just the people there were fucking hilarious. I always had a good time hanging out with them. And but I realized that I wouldn't be able to make any money as just a failed sculptor with a half-assed degree. So kind of got into tattooing, thinking, okay, if I go over there, I could tattoo out of people's houses and make them extra money. And then just got wrapped up into tattooing, and took me 15 years to move here. I thought it was just going to be like a year or two, just getting just good enough to where I can tattoo out of people's houses,
What was the main draw, or what lured you into the idea of like leaving the US?
I mean, probably because I had thought about it 15 years prior and started on that path, diverged from that path, and then kind of revisited it when, I don't know, man, to tell you the truth, Seattle just was not what it used to be, In the 90s, we had so much fun. Everything was dangerous. Everything was exciting. and spontaneous, and it turned into this, just yuppie city and boring as fuck. But Germany seemed like it'd be an adventure again, where I didn't feel like I was having any adventure in Seattle. I mean, I moved to Portland 2 years before I moved to Germany. So Seattle, Portland, Germany. But then Portland was just like Seattle, just a better music scene, but just drinking myself to death in both cities and not having any fun. Thought, well, maybe I can be entertained by life again in Germany. And I feel like I'm entertained over here again because everything's new and different, even just figuring out how to push a door or pull a door is an adventure, Ziehen for pull, drücken for push. I say it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My pronunciation is shit, but, So there's that whole like starting over thing. So you're learning how to tie your shoes again, and it's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me it's a similar experience. Like my life in Seattle was good. I don't feel like I was running away from it.
Right.
But I felt like in the last couple of years that I lived there, I just didn't really feel like I was like growing or
no, same.
Or,
yeah, exactly the same.
It's like life was good, but it's like, is this just how it's going to be for the rest of my life? And,
right.
And one lucky thing is like my parents were avid travelers, and we went all over the world as kids. And so from a young age, I really got to see a lot of different perspectives of what life is like.
Yeah.
And
I think that's important.
Yeah. And I just always had a dream of, trying to live abroad and having a completely different experience so that at least I wouldn't feel like, when my time comes to pass that I like wasted that opportunity.
There's two types of people in this world. People that work really hard to make their life easy. And then they sit back on their laurels and say, cool, life is easy. Now I can live the rest of my life in this easy way. And that's what I worked for. You and I, we worked really hard to make our lives easy and then looked at that and said, cool, boring. I want it to be difficult again, The difficult is a challenge, and the challenge is interesting, and it starts firing off your mental neurons again, and you feel like you're growing as a person, and I think that's what people like me and you are interested in, is growing as humans, not stopping growing because that's the easy part,
So what is this podcast going to be about?
I think it should be about something different every episode. I think it should just be about two old friends with their inside jokes that people want to listen to every episode till they finally get the punchline of the joke, And one episode, maybe we talk about, okay, there's a pandemic. You wear a mask, I wear a bandana. What's the pros and cons of that? And we can go from there. And one episode can be like, what's the hardest part about living in Germany as an expatriate? And one episode can be about, man, I needed new underwear and none of the underwear I was buying would fit. I've bought 3 different brands. None of them fit. How do you figure out what underwear to buy in this world? You read the reviews, but everybody's different downstairs. So who is the right person to listen to? How do you buy underwear? Can you help me? I'm tired of buying different brands of underwear. You know what I mean? So I think every time it could be like, what's the most important thing on your mind right now, this week, today, or generated by the last podcast? Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
And I also can honestly say I've never read reviews of underwear. But now that you mentioned it,
Unfortunately, I have. So I was like, why can't I get this right? The fucking epic underwear quest of 2020, you know?
Ooh, epic underwear quest of 2020. That's a good title. I think that's what this episode's called.
Hey, we could do a podcast. What kind of underwear do you think Joe Biden and Donald Trump wear?
I think Joe Biden.
Trump tidy whities all the way.
Definitely tidy whities.
And Biden boxers. Plaid boxers.
Plaid boxers.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe like white ones with blue vertical stripes or something.
I mean, you know, Trump has to wear a wife beater. It's just in the name.
Oh, man. Well, we still haven't come up with a name, but I feel like that'll appear in some form.
Right? I feel like it'll appear when we re-listen to this one. Be like, oh, that was a good quote. Maybe that's a name.
Yeah,
you know?
and then we'll have to like re-record the intro.
Because I think the thing is with band names, you're always thinking about, God damn, you take the bus, you walk down the street, you're at work, you're thinking, what the fuck am I going to call this band? You know, Bucket of Dirty Knives. I don't know. That's what I'm looking at right now. You know, so, for instance, if you're a dishwasher. You know. But we talked about it a little bit last week, and the whole week I really did not spend a single moment thinking about what we were going to call this.
The Great Underwear. The Great Underwear Crisis of 2020. Mr. Podcast.
Mr. Podcast, the movie.
Okay, let's leave this episode.
Podcast now in plus sizes.
Let's leave this episode on just a series of free association ideas of podcast names.
All right, and then we could start the next episode of those free association names. What do we get out of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Burping away from the mic.
Burping away from the mic. My shoes hurt.
Oh, what was my shoes hurt?
My shoes hurt was from Mr. Show.
Oh, right. Now I remember the episode. We should just rewatch Mr. Show and pull something out of that.
It's true.
That's good.
That was the peak of entertainment.
We call the show
Mustardaneous.
Well, one time I thought about starting a church, and I thought about it. If I was to do a church, I would take every religion that had ever existed and pull out the commonalities of every single religion, and what every single one had in common. That would be the religion I'm going to start. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, I think that would just be things that are just naturally true. Okay, so it's the Church of Truisms. So me as the preacher, I was envisioning in this, me as the preacher, I get up in front of the crowd and I say, okay, I am here, and so are you. It's Sunday. The sun is out right now. You're listening to me speak.
There's actually something to be said about that. It's like pure realism.
Yeah. But it's almost as like watching the news then, you know? Because once you cross that boundary of like, okay, right, we already know all that, then you get like, there was an election this week. One party is denying the results. The other party is embracing them. Cool. We already all knew that, you know? So what? So where do you get with truisms? It can be funny as an ideal, but you can't really go anywhere with it, you know? There's only so far you can go with it, you know?
It's like those new electric scooters.
Right. You can talk about the things that have been invented, but you can't really talk about what hasn't been invented yet. So I would have to get up and invent things in order to talk about them.
Interesting. I like that.
Like an electric sports bra. I think there's going to be a lot of Mr. Show references forever.
Yeah, this could This could even be a Mr. Show themed podcast, but it's not gonna be.
No, but we could have an entire episode dedicated to Mr. Show.
That's a great idea.
I will. We could do that. We can do TV. We can do art. Like, hey, I went to the museum this weekend. Oh yeah, what museum did you go to? Oh, to Pergamon. It's this museum in Berlin. You can explain it, and people listening that don't live in Germany can experience the museum through our eyes, and then we can tell a funny story about it. Like,
yeah.
Oh, went to the Pergamon museum, and I wore some of that underwear I bought that didn't fit.
Always comes back to the underwear.
Something down there was hanging out the whole time. But since I was in a museum, I didn't feel like I could just reach my hand down my pants and adjust it. So I spent 2 hours uncomfortably looking at amazing artwork from the posterity. So there was an interesting dynamic with that.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Did you get kicked out of the museum?
No, I'm just saying, for example, it didn't actually happen to me. Yeah. I was just saying that's something I would like to have happen,
The underwear part, or going to the museum?
Well, no, I was just thinking about, like, I was on the train the other day, and I was wearing some of the new underwear, and it wasn't fitting right, and I actually would have had to put my hands down my pants to adjust it. Since I'm on a train packed with people, you can't do it. And listeners probably don't know this, but they will now. I spend an hour on the train to get to work and back every day. So I'm on this train for an hour, just like shifting, and no, nothing. You got to get the hands down the pants for that one. Whatever was going on down there. I don't want to get too graphic, but the hand would have had to been down to pants. And I'm not that old or that crazy to where I'm just like, fuck it, nothing matters, nobody knows me, and gone for it. I just had to sit uncomfortably for an hour, So we're reading my book, like, oh, this book is not taking my attention off of this. Okay, I'm going to look at my phone. Phone sometimes takes my attention. Make this train ride go by faster. You know what I mean? So the podcast could be about bring it back to underwear.
Yeah. It all comes back to underwear. Really? It's one of those things you don't actively think about a lot, but it's there. It's always there.
Right. You don't think about it until it's wrong.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good name.
Not bad. So, wait, we were doing pre-association.
I think that's how our pre-association works.
Pre-association is just rambling. Yeah. It's not throwing out random names. It's just about telling random stories. So what happened to you? Well, that didn't actually happen. I just imagined it happened. Okay, I guess that's free association,
All right. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground.
I think we covered a lot of ground. So now I think we know why people will listen to us. Potentially. I'm not saying people will, but the potential.
Yeah. For our 6 listeners that are still holding on at this point, we might have whittled you down to 4, but...
But no, there are the 6 people that will listen because they're emotionally invested with us already. But to get beyond the 6 people, how would that potentially happen? And the idea is we don't do it for anybody but each other. We don't do a podcast thinking anybody besides those people are going to listen to us, or even those people at all, I lost where I was going with that. So maybe awesome, maybe that's why people will listen to it.
I think so. I think
okay. I don't know where that was going, and it didn't go anywhere, but it was interesting ride to get there.
Yeah. People will have no idea why they keep listening, but they're gonna.
I think. There's that stupid saying of like it's not the destination, it's the journey. Which is how I feel like this podcast is kind of geared towards. So I think the title should be somewhere in there. I think that would be a terrible name for a title, but I think we could play on that.
Yeah.
No,
it's true, because the whole point is that there's not really a point.
Right. How do we get from point A to point A and a half?
Point A and a half.
Because we never got to point B. We never actually really figured anything out. No. But you know, we got somewhere. Yeah. You know, we didn't get to where we wanted to go, but we still went somewhere.
And we ended up on a wonderful tangent.
Oh, exactly. Wonderful tangent.
Wonderful tangent sounds like
what my mom would call the podcast. You should call it Wonderful Tangent.
It sounds like a Garrison Keillor show on NPR my dad used to listen to or something.
All right. So next week we pick up trying to figure out what we'll call it again.
Yeah. We'll pick up the name issue. We'll maybe figure out...
Because now we got a purpose.
Definitely.
Once you got a purpose, then you can figure out what a name is. You know, I think it's easier to name something once you have a purpose.
Exactly.
You know? So we'll do that. Tune in next week when we figure out what the fuck we call this.
Yep. Sounds good.
Signing off, this was Jack.
This is Rob.
Ciao. We say ciao in Germany because, you know, it's an international way to say goodbye.